Welcome to another edition of Reclaiming Timeless Ways. Mike Traster, Simon Fuller, glad to have you along for another ride today. Mike, our topic is?
Well, it's pets and animals and the whole concept of consciousness, what we expect and how similar or different it might be, and the depth that might be in an animal and the surprises that we encounter. There's a little baby squirrel in my backyard, and he's got a permanent disfigurement of, I think it's his right paw. It's curled in. But he gets up and down the tree pretty easily, and I always talk to him, and he'll come within 3 feet of me now. And he's like about every 2 or 3 days, he'll come a little, tiny bit closer.
Sure.
You know? My dog used to love to chase him. The dog just passed recently because of an idiot veterinary practice, but unforgivable. But arrogance always results in incompetence. But the dog loved to chase him, but I was always convinced that if he caught him, he wouldn't have no clue what to do with him. He probably would have wanted to be his friend.
It was just the idea of that moving object is very appealing.
Right, yeah, the prey drive.
Right.
Oh, I got to get it. Now what do I do?
Right.
Oh, let's be buddies. So a number of years ago, I went down about 150 miles south of where I lived to meet this gal to see if we would be interested in one another. She lived in the outskirts of Eugene, Oregon. And she wanted us to go to the stables where she kept her horse. And she was just absolutely bonkers in love with this horse. And so she was inside this big building where the horses were in the stable and running the horse in circles and training and exercising it. And I was outside next to this very big split rail fence. And the next thing I see, about 50, 60 feet away, is the most fierce, lethal, primitive-looking, I think I told you this story,
Yeah.
right, that I've ever seen. It looked like it came from another planet, right? And I actually looked it up afterwards. So this thing comes flying at me, and it was like in a blink. It was right at the fence, and then it stopped. And I thought, my God, he's going to come through the fence, and I'm screwed, right? And he had a mane that was about that long, but it was like a brush.
Sure.
It was almost like a thick, very rigid brush, right? And he just fierce looking, very muscular, not a huge horse, but very strong. And just blinding fast. And I looked it up. Anyway, he comes to the fence and he stops and he puts his face right next to mine and he's looking at me, and all of a sudden he starts nuzzling me. And he rushed over because he wanted to be friendly.
Yeah.
He wanted to be affectionate. And I was like, oh my God, this, I thought I was dead, right? Beast. And a horse is 1,000 pounds anyway.
Your perception was different than his intention.
Oh my God, was it ever? Yes. So I went home and I thought, how the hell am I going to look this thing up? So I think I looked up primitive looking, fierce looking horse, and I finally come up with this crazy word, and it's Przewalskis. And it's, I believe, Polish. And so it looks like Przewalski, but it's Przewalski. So they use the letters differently than we do. And they're considered endangered.
Okay.
They're very bright. They're wild. They're maybe the last, or one of the last wild species of horses on the planet.
Okay.
And I mean, this thing was just this huge, incredibly sweet puppy.
Yeah.
He wanted to exchange affection.
Yeah.
And it absolutely blew my mind, And I mean, so we must have visited for 10, 15 minutes like that. He liked to touch. He was just very, very touchy and just amazingly sweet animal. And I would have loved to have stayed there with him for a week or a month and just
Yeah.
gotten to know him, you know.
Yeah.
He was beautiful, beautiful. So he was obviously sweet and loving and compassionate and bright. And he wanted to be connected and to have company, you know. And I was looking at him and I was, you know, I guess you're always contrasting what you think you know with what is.
Yeah.
And there I am once again thinking, oh, here's something I knew that was completely wrong.
Yeah.
What else do I know that's wrong? And
Sure.
how amazing is this? So that was one. The thing with the squirrels, they always come closer and closer. I had one sitting in my lap once out in Colorado eating out of my hand for about a half an hour. Wild squirrel. Had a deer come up to me at a park once and share my sandwich with me. It was an enclosed park, so they felt there was no hunting. You know?
Right.
But I remember stopping in a nursing home once. I think it was in Santa Rosa, California. And they had a Great Dane that lived in the nursing home. And the dog's mission, which it had chosen for itself, was to simply go from person to person, place to place, room to room, and connect with people. And he sat down and he just sat with me and he looked at me and visited with me for about 4 or 5 minutes. And then there was this moment where he said, okay, I'm done. You've had your visit. I've given you whatever it was I wanted to give you and share with you, and I'm off to my next mission.
Yeah.
The dog was on a mission. There was no question
Yeah.
about it, you know. And they said to me, oh yeah, he does that all day long. All day long. He goes from room to room, and you never know who he's going to visit, where or why, or for how long.
Right.
He figures that out on his own. I remember I had a golden, he was a cross between a golden retriever and a bloodhound. He was about 115, 120 pounds.
Sure.
Very solid, big sweetheart.
Yeah.
And I never saw him, he only got mad one time in his life. A druggie approached my ex-wife and he showed him fangs and the guy ran away. And I was at Ravenna Park in Seattle, excuse me. But I got him certified so I could bring him to the hospital where I worked on my days off and visit with patients. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, I'm in the room with this guy one day, and he had been the old Santa Claus from Kmart.
Okay.
And I don't know, there's probably a picture of him somewhere. And the next thing, the guy had had some abdominal surgery. My dog's name was Bowie. The next thing I know, Bowie is up on the bed, hugging up against this guy. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And he just got this huge smile on his face. He's like, don't be sorry. I love this. This is wonderful. You know, and my dog was very sweet. He loved everyone, you know. And again, you look at them and you think, how much more is there to them than what we tell each? You know, just because we tell each other something, we have a tale, and our tale becomes a part of our community, right? We identify with all, we're believing in exactly the same things. We have a list of things that we all know, except sometimes they're not true, you know? It's only a dog. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Is that true, or is that ridiculous? You know, maybe a dog can't run a lathe or grind a crankshaft, but does that mean it's not intelligent in some other way? Well, one of the questions that I ask as a half a joke but deadly serious is, how much, let's say you got a 3-year-old dog, how much of your language has the dog learned? You know, probably 30, 40, 50 words, maybe 100 words. Oh, how much of the dog's language have you learned? Or I? I need to go out, I'm hungry, pet me.
Yeah.
Oh, Does that mean that's all they're saying, or does that mean that's all we figured out?
Right.
So who's smart?
Yeah.
Seriously, who's smart? I don't know. And then I've had this happen on numerous occasions where an animal has passed and another animal has been in the house, and they're looking directly at something in the air. And they're responding to it. They might be wagging their tail. And this usually is only for a while after the animal passes, and then the behavior ceases or it becomes much less. And I've had other people say that they've seen it a lot with cats, but also a lot with dogs. And it's like, what is it that they're relating to?
Yeah.
You know, are they seeing the past spirit of the animal? Are they still wanting company here? Is it an angelic being?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. In many respects, we look at pets and kind of the stories you're telling, Mike, is, they're much more primitive and simplified.
Right.
In one respect, but that also makes them, I think, more complex in another. As you were talking in our last show about meditative states and basically finding a way to stop the noise in our life. We've all got all this noise going on. They are simply, I believe, in that state more often. You know what I mean? Therefore, more in tune, more dialed in, more focused.
Right.
And what their mission is, as you talked about with the Great Dane, or I've had many pets, and as have you, Mike, and all a little bit different in sort of their makeup, but yet all similar in the sense that a pet is a loyal, loving, forgiving, pretty much all the things that we aspire to be as humans. They are in many ways. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely, to answer your question, more to them than we think.
Much more.
Yeah.
And I came to the conclusion, and I've shared this with many people who walk a very formal Christian walk, and I have yet to have someone disagree with me.
Yeah.
And what it is I came up with this thought, and then I formulated a sentence, and that is, I believe that they were created on a higher order than we are. Not more fancy, but higher, And it's remarkable. When you are in that simple state with the dog or the cat or an animal out in nature that decides that it trusts you, we are in a state of hope and grace.
Yeah.
And we live in this hyper rational world where we explain away everything we can't see. Mm-hmm. And along with that, I think, goes hope. But the animal, one of their missions, if you will, is to sustain hope in themselves, obviously, and also to share it. Yeah. To share that because with hope, hope is possibility. Yeah. Hope is a life-giving thing, right? The ambulance shows up, and you're looking at somebody and they're croaking and drooling and making funny sounds, croaking, and they say, "Don't give up." Yeah. Right? Hope. Yeah. The animal looks at you very often. Just come over if you're in a bad state, or the animal in the nursing home, and they reinfuse somebody with hope.
Yeah.
And maybe in a way that people have a much harder time doing.
Yeah.
So I had written this down, and it's kind of a leap of thought, and it's somewhat connected. That is the idea of wabi-sabi, which I've mentioned once or twice. It's the idea that there's perfection within imperfection.
Sure.
So like in Japan, which is where the term is from, if you had a piece of pottery with a crack in it, they would fill it with something else. And they would say this is perfectly imperfect, or
Sure.
imperfectly perfect.
Sure.
Either way, I don't care, right?
Right.
That's wabi-sabi right there, I guess, Moving always towards the unknown, new possibilities and hope, watercolor. So the watercolor is like you drift into infinity. So when you're drifting into infinity, your imagination is open. Like if you see a path, and the path maybe goes along a pond, and colors in a natural painting soften, and just like if you look at things very close up, colors are very vivid in life, but they kind of gray and brown out as they get further away because of dust in the air,
Sure.
things like that. So I think pets, this was a little bit of a leap here, a segue, but pets bring us back to that state of simplicity and simple appreciation,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that we become so practical that we become impractical.
Yeah.
You know? And I think very impractical, because we stop being receptive to the majesty and the power, the subtlety, the beauty, the love that was intentionally infused into creation by God.
Yeah.
And the pet has this grace living in them that we don't have.
And that's the part where I was thinking I can both get on board with they were created on a higher power, but also I can poke a few holes in my brain in that. But I think the main key that I'm taking away, and I would agree with, is what you just said. And I would summarize that by saying this, which would kind of be an argument in your case. We need them more than they need us.
In many ways.
I mean, that's kind of, they would survive, they would figure it out, they would be fine out in the wild. Why do we turn animals into pets? They're not looking, I mean, they do enjoy companionship, they do enjoy us, but I promise we have seeked them out before they've seeked us.
I guess I would maybe somewhat agree with that, but I would say it a little differently. I would say that we are intentionally designed to be one another's servants,
There you go.
and that we deeply need one another.
Yeah.
We deeply need one another. You do wonderful work here with animals that need people.
Right.
You know, and that might be a good.
That's a truth that I hadn't thought of. Right. They needed me in that situation.
Oh, they
yeah.
need you. You are like like nature's prescription for some of these little creatures.
Sure.
You know, you really are. They're desperate and they're doomed, and then you show up, and all of a sudden life and hope is breathed back into them. So, you know,
I would say that they give me more than I can give them.
I could very well
Because
be.
in return, I promise, there's a reason that I'm pulled in that direction, because there's nothing quite like a good pet, Mike, and anybody watching that has a pet knows.
Absolutely.
I have a lot of good friendships, a wonderful wife, wonderful children, and all. It's a different relationship, but I'll tell you, a pet relationship, a true partnership with a pet, I don't even know how to explain it just right.
Well, as I've mentioned a few times, both in my disgust and bitterness and anger towards the vet, worthless piece of crap, and the loss of my dog, which was very unnecessary. When we lose, and it could be a pet or a person, right? And we're grieving, and we start talking out loud or to ourselves or both about loss. I really thought this through, because your mind is like a car, right? It doesn't just drive itself.
Sure.
We make decisions about what we think and say and feel and experience, what we expect and what we plan, right? All of that. Steering wheel, gears, clutch, gas, brake,
Sure.
right? Emergency brake. So what I say and I believe that speaking to your pet or any loved one, the way I say it is this: it's in God's power to decide whether or not their heart hears me
Sure.
or you.
Yeah.
It's not up to me. It's up to me to reach out and say, if you can hear me, if it's in God's will that you hear me, and please stop preach babbling. Those of you that want to right now, just try to hear this, okay? Without trying to shut it down. It's in God's will, right? And so you can say, I miss you, but I love you much more. You can say that to anyone who's passed, two-legged or four. I miss you, but I love you 1,000 times more. And that will take you out of that state of doom and hopelessness and helplessness
Sure.
and bring you back to light. And also, if you believe that you're communicating with a loved one who's passed, human or not, you're sending them love and hope. You're not sending them despair. I love you. I miss you, but I love you much more. Okay? And that's that whole message.
Okay, pets, they are a blessing.
Well, they most certainly are. Huge.
Hope you watching are enjoying that blessing. If not, maybe you will. Either way, we appreciate the blessing you're giving us by watching us. We hope you share us out to some friends and family. And until next time, we hope you have a fantastic day.
If you know somebody who's mourning, try to share that phrase with them, I think, or your own version of it. I think it's very helpful.
Yeah.
Take care.
Have a good day.